welcome to another one of my ballistics comparison videos. Today I am comparing the 243 Winchester to the 7mm-08. This was a requested video, and so I'm doing this one for you just to see the difference here. They are based on the same 308 case, however one is 243 caliber, the other one is 7mm or 284 caliber. So I'm just comparing these real quick. I'll go through the ballistics. I gather the data from Hornady. They have the ballistic charts, Hornady reloading data. I'm taking it from the 10th edition reloading manual. From Federal's website, they have a great calculator here. You can go to factory loads and select the caliber you want to do, and select the bullets, and then go through, and it'll determine all the ballistics for you. So that's a really good resource there. I'm also using the Nasser load data as well as IMR Hodgkin Reloading Center for load data there. So let's go ahead and get started. The 243 is very mild recoil. I mean, it's shooting fairly small bullets, 75 grain, 95 grain, 100 grains. This is the pounds of recoil, and this is the velocity of feet per second that the energy is traveling back towards you. So let's get started here on the 243. The 75 grain bullet going 3,400 feet per second has 7.2 pounds of recoil at 7.4 feet per second traveling back at you. And then the 95 grain at 3,100 feet per second has 11 foot-pounds of energy and traveling at 9.9 feet per second back at you. And the 100 grain, 2960 feet per second, so 8.8. I'm guessing this is a specific load. It might be a heavier load. It's going quite a bit faster, and it's only 5 grains less than the 100 grain. And I'm guessing that's why it's 11 pounds there. Go down to the 7mm-08 with 12.1 pounds with 120 grain, which is pretty good. I mean, you go look at the 95 grain, it's only 1 pound more of recoil. And then you go up to the 140 grain, and it's 12.6 pounds. So both of these are very mild recoil guns. If you don't like recoil, depending on what you're using the gun for, both of these are great. The 243, I know several people that have used it for elk now, both personally and through YouTube and online. I've met people that have shot elk with it. It is definitely on the light side for elk, and if you are going to use it for elk, I would really restrict the distance, and bullet selection will be key. And the same thing can be said of the 7mm-08, but it does have about double the energy of the 243, and we'll see that as we get further down here. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into the bullet performances and the energy of these two guns. So I start out with the 7mm-08. This is the Hornady 150 grain ELDX precision ammo. This is factory ammo first, and the factory or ELDX just released this last month, January, or actually maybe even December, so it's coming on a couple months now. But their ELDX bullets are very good performing bullets. They took the design of the AMAX bullets, which was their target competition bullets, and then they figured out that the tip, the ballistics tip, the plastic piece, was actually melting in flight and causing some fluctuations in bullet performance. They found a polymer that would fix that so it no longer melts. So they put the tip on there, and then the ELDX holds together a lot better. The X does. Just the ELD is for target, the X is for hunting. The ELDX penetrates more and has controlled expansion. The ELD doesn't really have that as much. So the ELDX, great hunting ammo from Hornady. From within the last year they released these bullets, and the ammo they just did for this 7mm-08 just within the last couple months. Let's get down to the numbers here. I did all these at 500 yards. I did some comparisons further down at 200 yards so you can see the energy there. Kind of what you would, the max you would use the 243 for elk, I think, would be about 200 yards. But anyway, let's take a look here. So at 500 yards, this bullet, the 150 grain, is traveling 2,037 feet per second, has 1,381 foot-pounds of energy, drops 43 inches. The next one is the 139 grain SST. It's 2,059 feet per second. It has 1,308 foot-pounds of energy. And right here, these two numbers right here, you can see this one's traveling faster, but this one has more energy. And this is a lighter bullet, which is partly due to that, but this one has a little bit better ballistic coefficient, so it has a little more, it retains a little more energy at 500 yards, and even more so beyond once you go past 500 yards. But the SST drops 39.6 inches. Now go down to the GMX, traveling 2,026 feet per second, 1,267 foot-pounds of energy, and 40.8. Now compare down here. You go to the SSTs down here, and you can see the big difference right here. This is 95 grain versus 139 grain. This one's 1,950 feet per second and 802 foot-pounds of energy. It does drop less because this is a faster or a flatter shooting gun, but the energy is not going to be close to the same. You're looking 500 foot-pounds more at 500 yards for the 7MM-08 here. And same with the GMXs down here. If you go GMX Superformance, 80 grain, only 657. This is the largest they offer here. Same with this, 139 is the largest they offer here. You're 1267, so almost double the energy there. Federal Nasser Partition. This is a long, true, tried and true partition bullet for hunting. Great penetration. Great for hunting larger game with tougher skin, like elk and stuff. This is the 140 grain partition. It's not loaded very hot from Federal. This is just an example. There are a couple other manufacturers that do load Nasser, but Federal is one of the main ones. 500 yards. It's going 1,847 feet per second. 1,061 foot-pounds of energy, drops 55 inches. Down here, the ballistic tip going 1,935, and you have 1,164 foot-pounds of energy. The ballistic tip has more energy, but it does not penetrate like the partition does. So it would be ideal for lighter game, deer, varmint type animals, but not for elk or anything heavier than that. Federal ammunition trophy right here. I just noticed a typo, sorry about that. Trophy copper, 140 grain, 1942, 1,172. And I'm guessing they released this copper because in the state of California, lead core bullets are illegal now. This is a copper core bullet, and they actually hold some pretty good energy. I'm not sure the penetration on that, what it is. Let's go back down here. Partition here, so this is what you would use if you were hunting elk, in my opinion. The partition here from the factory is not a very hot bullet, but it will penetrate better, and you'd have better luck with an elk if you were using this. I would recommend staying within 200 yards personally. 100 would be ideal, or less if you can, but this one should get the job done. It penetrates very well. But the 100 grain partitions go on 1,776 feet per second at 500 yards, 701 foot-pounds of energy, drops 56 inches. This is a big bullet, and it's not moving very fast for the 243. Now the ballistic tip, it's a pretty small bullet, but it is flying 2,105 feet per second. So if you notice, that's the fastest bullet of both guns so far at 500 yards from the factory. It has 541 foot-pounds of energy, but that's only 55 grains. That's a pretty small bullet, but that would be sufficient for a deer, probably, if you're hunting deer, or great for varmints. Now here's the ballistic tip, the 70 grain, a little bit more energy, not traveling quite as fast. This one, I mean, this one's really flat, only drops 32 inches. This one down here, almost 40 inches of drop, 611 foot-pounds, and 1983. And then they have a little bit bigger ballistic tip. This one is 756 foot-pounds, 1893, 41 inches. So about 10 inches more than the 55 grain. But it does retain more energy. The heavier bullets usually have a better ballistic coefficient. So, okay, moving down here to hand loads. My favorite hand load right now for my gun, the 7MM-08 that I have, is the ELDX. However, that's not yet released. I imagine it will be shortly for the 243. They probably have an ELD version, but probably not an ELDX version yet. Basically, every gun or every cartridge they made the AMAX for, they've made an ELDX for so far. So I imagine it'll be coming soon. It's just not quite here. So I did go ahead and pulled the data for this. So this is from the Hornady 10th edition reloading manual. That's the load data here, and this is the ballistics for that 105 grain AMAX. And actually, many people have had great success with this in hunting. It does fall apart a little bit more when it hits the animals, but people have used it for hunting deer especially, and they might be able to take an elk. I'm not sure if I'd use it on an elk. But it does have great energy because the ballistic coefficient is so high. It holds a lot of energy. I mean, you're looking, this is the max load, but they also have several in between. The Winchester Supreme 780, it's 47 grains, and with that it's going 2150 feet per second at 500 yards. So by far the fastest, definitely more power than what's coming out of the factory load. And then 1,079 foot-pounds of energy. So it's your first one to break 1,000 foot-pounds, and it does it pretty well. Great bullet there. That one would be a great deer bullet for long range for the 243. And then down here, this one isn't really a hunting. It's not a hunting bullet. Note from Sierra, it says, while they are recognized around the world for record-setting accuracy, Match King and tipped Match King bullets are not recommended for most hunting applications. Which is too bad because this has excellent energy. Using the exact same data on the IMR website, it has the load data for both, using 47 grains of the Winchester Supreme 780, but this one's going 2,204 feet per second and 1,154 foot-pounds of energy. This has a higher ballistic coefficient than the AMAX does, but as it says, not to be used for hunting. Hornady doesn't give that warning for the 105 grain AMAX, even though it technically isn't designed for hunting. People have had success with it for hunting, but this is impressive energy here out of the such a small caliber. It is 107 grain, which is a pretty large bullet for the 243, but I mean, 1,154 foot-pounds of energy is pretty impressive. Down here, now you compare this to the 7MM-08, and I haven't personally loaded this one. I will. I have personally loaded this, and I have that load data down here, how my gun performs. I've done this exact same recipe below. But so for the 150 grain, the load data from Hornady, 2,065 feet per second, 1,421 foot-pounds of energy. Here's the 162 grain. This is what I used this last year during my elk hunt. And this is the 162 grain using the RL 1746 grains of the powder, 2030 feet per second, 1482. Now that's not what I got. This is what I got down here according to my chronograph. I loaded 46 grains, and I'm guessing it's because I seated the overall length out farther. It recommended 2.88, but I seated it out to 5 thousandths off the lance of my rifle. And so I think that increased the pressure just a little bit as well. But I was getting 2,815 feet per second, 2129 FPS, 1,631 foot-pounds of energy at 500 yards. This is why I was using this one for elk. Now, I'm going to tone this down a little bit because this is a little too hot. There were a little bit of pressure signs. My primers were slightly flattened, and so I am going to tone this down, and I might actually switch to the 150 grain. I haven't done any tests on that yet, but if I switch to 150 grain, I'm going to try and decide if I want to go to Nasser or the ELDX for that. So let's move down here to some Nasser partitions with some hand loads. Nasser has your most accurate, and then it has your max, and this here actually included the 200 yards ballistics here. So if I were to hunt elk, I would take the 100 grain partition and load it. I would load it probably with this, and then I would try and stay within 200 yards. If you look at this, at 500 yards, it's going 1,915 feet per second, and has 814 pounds of energy, which is decent at 500 yards. It's not spectacular, but if you look at 200 yards, 1,444 foot-pounds of energy with only a 3-inch drop. So this is what I would focus on if I was hunting elk with the 243. Now here is the max load. You can see it jumps up to 899 feet per second at 500 yards, or foot-pounds, and 1,576 foot-pounds at 200 yards. So this is the max, and there are several powders in between here. So you have several options, probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 options between those two powders to get a good hunting bullet. Now I threw in the Nasser custom competition because it has such high ballistic coefficient. They don't recommend it for hunting because the internal construction makes them unpredictable on how they'll perform on game animal terminal performance. So they don't recommend it for hunting because you don't know what it's going to do when it hits the animal. They don't have any controlled expansion, but the ballistics on this are pretty awesome. So if you look at this, at 500 yards it has 1,025 feet per second on the most accurate, and then at 200 yards 1,546 foot-pounds of energy. You go down to the max loads, you have 1,146 foot-pounds of energy at 500 yards, and at 200 yards you have 1,713 foot-pounds of energy. This is enough energy to take an elk, no problem. If your shot placement's good, this will down almost any elk. But again, this isn't the best bullet for penetration. You don't know what it's going to do, and I personally wouldn't take that gamble. But it does have remarkable energy there. The Hornady ELEX bullets combine target with hunting in mind, which is why I chose those for my elk. If and when that Hornady releases the ELEX for the 243, it would be a great option with energy figures similar to the custom competition in Sierra Hollow Point Boat Tail. So it's going to have similar performance to these and these up here. So I really hope Hornady does release those. Let's get down here. 7mm-08, 140 Grand Partition, which is the smallest partition available in 7mm, 500 yards, 1,200 foot-pounds of energy, 1969 feet per second, 49-inch drop. And I added the 200 yards here. So 200 yards, you have almost 2,000 foot-pounds of energy out of this bullet. And this is not I should say this isn't the best bullet. I would actually use the AccuBond instead. The AccuBond is the new version of the Partition. They don't have it yet for the 243, but they do have it in 7mm. They basically use the newer bonding technology to get it to perform like the Partition, but it has the newer technology in ballistics that gives it a better ballistic coefficiency. So it just performs better. At 500 yards, 2,062 feet per second, and 1,321 foot-pounds of energy. So it has about 115, 116 foot-pounds of energy more. It drops 2 inches less. It's moving a little bit faster. And on this particular load recipe, the most accurate and max is the exact same load. So that's good to know. You know you're going to get this performance right there. At 200 yards, this was well over 2,000 feet per second. I think it was about 2,100 feet per second, or I'm sorry, foot-pounds of energy, right around there. So definitely ideal. I would say between 1 to 500 yards, this would be fine for elk. 150 Grand Partition. It's it's been around for a long time. It's a mediocre performer. The 140 Grand actually has more energy because it's traveling faster, as you can see. So max load. This is going to have some pressure signs. You can see it's 49 grains, which is pretty much topped out for the 308 case with the 7mm bullet. 1,258 foot-pounds of energy. This AccuBond long range, this is the one I am trying to decide if I want to load instead of my ELEX bullets. And it's because of these numbers down here. The most accurate, which is a fairly conservative load, gives you 1,411 foot-pounds of energy at 500 yards. Now, if you go to the max load, you got 1,553, so 142 foot-pounds more, 2,159 feet per second. And this is not right, obviously. I think that might have been 45 inches drop. And then you can keep going up with the 7mm. You have bigger options. You have a 160 grain option, but the energy isn't, you're not gaining much energy over it because the ballistic coefficient isn't really there. 1,095 and 1,290. Of course, these will penetrate a little bit more because they are heavier projectiles. Well, yes and no. It depends on a lot of things. If these are traveling fast, it depends. You have more momentum with these heavier bullets. And then down here, 175 grain. This is going to kick like a beast. I mean, you might as well be hunting with a 7mm mag if you're going to be shooting this bullet. 1,321 foot-pounds of energy at the top. So there you go. Hopefully that was easy enough to understand. Just a quick comparison between the 243 and the 7mm-08. The 7mm-08 is definitely a safer bet if you're going to be hunting elk. The 243, it can be done, and it has been done, but it is a really light caliber for elk. I would mostly stick to deer or smaller game. Personally, 7mm-08, some people have even said that's too small for elk, but I know several people that have taken elk with it, and it is more than adequate, especially with good shot placement. As you can see here, these hand loads for the 7mm-08, some of them outperform factory loads for the 7mm Remington Magnum. So there you go, and people are killing elk with those just fine. Anyway, Let me know if you have any questions, if you have any videos that you'd like to request, any comparisons, comment below or send me a message. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be uploading a video every week, either Tuesday or Wednesday. You should see that. So subscribe and check out the other videos that are coming.